We were at Collective Genius, and I happened to run into David Lecko, one of the founders of DealMachine, who's an amazing guy and actually somebody I follow and somebody I really respect their business practices, somebody who we use DealMachine all the time. It's one of the first things that we preach to people who are starting out in real estate, saying like, hey, what should I do? I say, start driving for dollars. And you reinvented this whole business. I'll give you credit single-handedly. I know you have a partner. I know you got other things. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so this was 8 years ago, and I was working for somebody and putting about 60 hours in per week.
What were you doing?
I had made a software, and he bought it from me for $10,000. And I went to work for him. It was for fraternity recruitment. It was right after college, right after I had that experience.
Where'd you go to college?
Missouri S&T in Rollin, Missouri. So I did engineering.
I didn't even know before we talked that you're from St. Louis, Missouri.
I'm from St. Louis, that's right.
And now I'm living in Kansas City. You're living in Austin, and you're investing in Indianapolis.
Correct. So the reason why I moved to Indianapolis was because all the fraternity sorority headquarters are in Indianapolis.
Okay.
So I moved out there.
For the whole country?
Yeah, like 50% of them. They're all concentrated there. It's a big nonprofit headquarters city.
Okay.
And that's due to the American Red Cross. They lobbied to get some preferential nonprofit, tax treatment and whatnot.
Okay.
And it attracted a lot of nonprofits. So a lot of those headquarters are in Indianapolis.
So you moved to Indianapolis with the goal of, obviously what you did was successfully build an app and sell it for $10,000. What was the whole?
That was after a year and a half of work, right? That was a great deal. But
for the guy who bought it.
Of course, yes. And I was making 70. I took a pay cut of $50,000 a year to work for him.
Right.
But I knew that when I'm young, watch the poll there, when I'm young, that putting in the time was the most valuable thing. The things that I would learn from watching how this guy was able to grow a business and help solve a need, I knew that was going to be valuable for me. So I wasn't too worried about making the most money early on. And in real estate, we always give that advice too. It's like, hey, when you're starting out, find a way to help somebody that you meet at a RIA.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Yeah, so it was a similar type of mindset that I had. And even though it was not a lot, $50,000 a year, I was saving 50% of it because I knew that time was on my side for investments, right? So I had 3 roommates, a rusty car, and I put 60 hours a week working for this guy. It was great. It was for
I like your DNA already.
Yeah.
So people who see you online, they see the sports cards. They don't see the fact that you were saving your money. Are you still what I would call budget friendly? Because I'm still cheap.
So it depends on certain things, So I think time is the most valuable thing for me.
Sure, yeah.
And so I pay somebody that comes and cooks meals so that I follow a certain diet. And the cost ends up being like $500, sometimes $600 a week, including the food, but also for her to just come and cook, right? So that's not cheap. It's like $2,000 in food a month. But the alternative is that I cook it. I don't want to spend time doing that. Right. Or I Uber Eats it, and that's just not going to be as healthy, right?
How much is an average Uber Eats meal? It's like $30.
Yeah, when you figure that out and the extra fees and stuff, it gets quite expensive. So I'm not budget on everything. I've allowed myself to spend on some stuff. That's kind of how I've viewed things. Some things I'll definitely spend money on.
So when you went to Indianapolis, you started this other fraternity business. What gave you the real estate bug?
Yeah, so the guy who owned that company, I noticed I was working 60 hours a week, but he was not. He was working like 4. And, he had another company that existed already that was complementary. It was a coaching business. Fraternity headquarters would hire his business to help them grow. And so it was very complementary to the software. But I noticed I'm just killing myself and he's not. So eventually I was like, what was he doing differently? Obviously he owns the business and I don't. So that was a key thing I learned, was like, well, if you own it, eventually others can be doing the ground level work. He also had 5 rental properties, which seemed like a lot at the time.
Right.
And I asked him about that because I had been putting in money into my Roth IRA, maxing that out, and then had an additional retail stock market account where I was buying index funds.
So this is like all of your kind of like, hey, these are the right things to do. This is what I've been told to do.
Yeah.
Max out your 401k, max out your Roth, save your money, make good investments. Now you see this guy who's got a little bit of property, a lot of free time, and you're noticing that you're busting your ass for this guy. So where does the switch take place?
I guess a little bit of resentment built over time.
Ooh, I love that.
And so it led me to ask him after 2 years, you know, I kind of realized I've learned as much as I can in this job. I also feel a bit burned out. I need to put my focus into something that will be beneficial to me in that regard, you know? But anyway, the whole curiosity about his rental properties, he's like, well, the stocks can go up and down. Like, you probably noticed that if you've invested over the last few years.
Oh yeah.
The real estate, as long as you buy it right, the rent always goes up, the value of the property always goes up, and you could cash flow every month, let the property pay for itself, and that cash flow that you get can grow over time. And so that's really why I chose real estate. So I went looking for answers. I got Rich Dad Poor Dad. I went to a meetup. I was a little bit discouraged because the guy's like, well, I got these deals in 2008. There's not really that many good deals now. But looking back, I started buying my rentals 8 years ago, and it was not a crash or anything like that. But yeah, if you looked at my portfolio, you'd have the same discouragement. You'd be like, oh shit, man, David had such good deals 8 years ago.
He's a lucky guy.
But now it's what I realize is, as long as you do buy it right, so it cash flows, dude, the best thing is just letting time do its thing, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I always say this, in real estate, time is on your side.
Yeah.
Because your big ups, like if you just wait long enough, they'll end up looking like an amazing investment.
Yeah.
I bought properties in 2005 at the height of the market in Las Vegas. It took me 17 years to get out of them, but they did come back.
Okay. Well,
And if I would have held on for probably 20 years,
Yeah.
I actually would have done pretty good, but I wanted to get out of those deals badly. Real estate over time has been a better investment than stocks that go up and down and don't provide cash flow.
that was my hypothesis.
Right.
And I looked up to this guy. He had stuff figured out that I didn't yet, but it set me on a path to go do what he did, so that way I could stop putting in 60 hours a week for peanuts. You know, and eventually, you know, he was like, hey, we need to increase your salary, but I was already on a path to doing my own things, you know, so we ended up splitting ways. But the key thing that I, in real estate, was told was to go look for rundown houses, because I was looking at what was listed for sale and none of that would cash flow.
Right.
And I noticed that, so I went looking for rundown houses. And ultimately, I wrote down 40 addresses over 2 months. I saw that one of them was being constructed on.
Yeah.
And I thought, I had this on my list, man. That was my house. And I saw somebody had just bought it.
I've had that happen many times.
I hadn't even reached out yet.
Okay.
So I knew I needed a change, because obviously they're not going to sell me anything if I haven't reached out. So that was where what turned into Deal Machine was just like a widget on my phone I created that following weekend, because I had some software skills. It was a basic app where I could pin the house. It would tell me who owned it from the county record, and then I could
So you created that in a weekend?
I could have mail sent. I mean, yeah, it was a very basic app.
I don't care if it's
pretty.
basic or not, dude. You're not giving yourself any justice. So
Yeah,
you
no, it's
created an
good.
app on the weekend that could pin the app from the parcel number,
Yeah.
and send out a piece of mail?
Yeah. I mean, it was nothing like it is now, but it was just.
I get that, but
It was
still,
just really, really
I'd
basic.
hate to see you in solitary confinement with a computer.
I can't do that anymore. I mean, I've been out of the coding game because ultimately I had a best friend who was such a great software developer. I asked him to be. Ultimately, I realized about a year into me using this little widget.
Yeah.
That somebody who worked for Alpine Property Group in Indianapolis named Brittany Wicks, she hosted a meetup every month.
Okay.
She came to buy properties at the auction and help new wholesalers understand how to get a deal so she could buy them from them too. And so
Right.
I showed her at this meetup. I was like, yeah, I've been using this thing. And she's like, well, I'll spend $1,000 to try a new marketing method. Let me get a hold of that. I was like, this is free. It's not on the App Store, but I'll figure out how to get it on your phone. So I had to come up with a name and put it on the App Store. It was a free app. And I was like, I'll charge you $1.75 of mail. You can bulk buy some mail, to $1,000.
Yeah.
So that was the deal we did. And that's when I realized, like, man, I didn't even try to sell it, but it's people who are serious about this business. They're always looking for an edge. It seems like a good idea because driving for dollars was a very common advice. But
Right.
there just wasn't an app to help streamline that process.
You changed the game, bro.
Thanks, man.
I've been investing in real estate since 2002, driving for dollars actively since 2013, and I thought it was advanced when we could take digital notes versus writing it down. Like Deal Machine has changed the game, and in fact, it has come so far. I think I bought it when it was first going in Vegas. Like, you'd have to go look at my account originally to see what it was. But I told you when I kind of shut down my business in Vegas and moved to Kansas City, I met with a wholesaler, one of your co-hosts on your podcast.
Yeah, Ryan
Haywood, and I'm like, where are you getting all these deals from? He's like, I just use this app. And I was like, instantly, I'm like, okay, well, I'm back at that app because apparently that's working really well out here in Missouri. And at that point in time, the technology had changed so much so in just the 2 years since I hadn't used it. And now, tell me where you're at right now with it currently.
Right, so 8 years in, started with driving for dollars, have expanded to being a data provider. And the biggest reason why people are coming to us now, I think I said, we've grown 44% year to year. And that's in year 8 of being in business. So it's typically harder to grow when you're bigger, and you're more established. So it's been great. A huge reason why that's happening is because we came out with unlimited contact info. So if anybody is cold calling or texting, they're using skip tracing services, which means you get the phone number. And typically we'd spend like 6 or 10 cents or even 15 cents.
Can we back up a little bit for people who are brand new to wholesaling and stuff, and they don't know what skip tracing is, and they don't know kind of what your software does? Because a lot of times, just to let people who are listening or watching right now know, is typically, you would have to go in, you'd have to create a list, you'd have to import that list, and then you have to skip trace that list, which means you have to find out their name, phone numbers, email address, or what are likely to be their name, phone numbers, and email address, and then you'd have to go and upload that and mail it. Now, what does DealMachine allow you to do?
Yeah, if you look up a property, it's pre-matched to what the person is who owns the property, what their age is, what their household income is, what other properties they own, and then most importantly, their phone number and their email address and their relatives, right? So it's pre-matched. You don't have to spend extra money to get that information. It's actually included in the monthly fee of DealMachine, which starts at $99. So if you were skip tracing $10,000 a month, that costs you over $1,000 traditionally. So you could save $900 a month by just having your DealMachine account lets you export $10,000 per month, right? So the savings get bigger if you're a bigger player and you skip trace even more. But that's what's great about it. And here's the kicker is like, it's also 50% more accurate than other providers, because in testing we've done, like 33% of properties, they don't have a skip tracing match. And so when that happens, we will provide you a list of every person with that owner's name in the United States. So they're in that list, and we prioritize it based on, well, where do they live? What's their area code? Does it seem like that's more likely the property owner? So it's called the private investigator tool. You could get that list. There's nowhere else you can get that in DealMachine. So it helps you close that gap of the properties you'd normally not have info for skip tracing it. So it's really powerful. That's why people are just coming over right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like we do use all types of software, but the one that I tell everybody is the first one that you want to download. And if you're watching this, listening to this, or whatever, it's like if you're a brand new investor, exactly what you just said is look for distressed house, send them a freaking postcard, and then if you want to be aggressive, which you should be, is now you can call them. Before, that would be a little bit frustrating, I'm sure, for people to have to go and use this software and then go to that software and do whatever else. Now they just go to your software, they've got everything that they need in one spot.
Right. Well, yeah, so if you're just getting started, there's somebody local to the Austin market that I've become friends with. Their daughter's graduating college, and daughter was interested in doing fashion, but she wasn't getting any calls back on jobs. I mean, that's a tough industry to go into, right? So that was just like a conversation which he was asking advice. I was like, I mean, my passion is race car driving, but even in the pro level like NASCAR, a lot of those drivers pay to be there. So it's like if your passion is fashion, being a really successful fashion person is very difficult, unless you're some type of prodigy. So find a profession that can earn you money, and then you can spend money on whatever that hobby is or that passion is. So she was like, well, how do I do wholesaling real estate? Seems like you can make a lot of money that way.
Yeah.
And so, and wanted to share this for anybody who's graduating, feels pressure from their parents, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet, this isn't working out. She took 500 houses that hadn't paid taxes on the outskirts of Austin, 20-minute around the perimeter, where it's not really pressure from flipping houses, but a lot of non-updated homes, that you can find that. So she took, she spent out $500. So that would mean she what is it, 50 cents a postcard. So she's probably sent mail to like 1,000 properties that hadn't paid their taxes. So, and that's how she's getting started to do this after college. Right, she's graduating this month.
Now, we're in there for a bunch of stuff going on with like regulation changes and stuff like that.
Right.
How does Deal Machine not just react to them, but be a part of, like, as you becoming a big company? I mean, you guys are a big company now. You guys started as a very small company. I'm sure it doesn't feel like it has grown that much, but I've seen it like firsthand, just what you guys are doing. And
well, it was nothing.
Yeah.
So right there was so it's definitely grown into a lot now.
Yeah, and one thing I mentioned in there on the questions is, like, I believe that investors, our biggest limiting factor is that we don't work together. Like, for like, a lot of us right now are being like crucified as bad people. Like, oh, you flip houses, you must be a shithead or a slumlord or a piece of crap because you just took the worst house in the neighborhood and then improved it. And that's a bad thing to do, right? Like, anything else would be a good thing to do, but because you did it for profit, so California just passed a law where literally they're trying to take away people's ability to flip. I don't know if you're familiar with that law, but there's a lot of these laws that are passing. My big question is, like, does Deal Machine have any like goals to like try to lobby, get regulations? Is that on the radar?
No,
okay.
There's not. No, I'm not familiar with the law in California, but I mean, the business model of flipping homes has been around since real estate existed.
Right.
So I think a lot of it is like fear-based, and people are, just listening to, what other people say, and they're not really totally informed. We just heard a presentation today from one of the biggest house flippers or, wholesalers or somebody who's reselling a property in their marketplace.
Right.
And he was talking about in South Carolina, there's a law. A lot of people think wholesaling is banned, right?
Right.
And the takeaway was like, it's not banned. He read a provision about that they put in there to the law. He helped make the law, right?
Right.
And it was like saying like wholesaling is protected. Wholesaling is marketing a contract, and that is protected in the law. It's right there. Right. So I think the biggest thing was like, be transparent about what you're doing. Right. Don't say I am the buyer when you're intending to resell it to someone else.
Right.
But disclose what you're planning on doing. Disclose that you're planning on, reselling it for profit. That's what you're going to do. I mean, he said they had 208 complaints, but what do they do? 10,000 deals a year. So I'm personally not worried about it. Definitely keeping an eye on it and focus on like what is like here and now happening. I mean, do you share a similar view on that?
I never worry about what's going to happen because you really can't control that. But if my whole core business is based on it, I definitely feel like the one thing that we need to do as investors is, what do they say? Organizing and unionizing is kind of the way to get your voice heard. And I think as investors, it would be stupid for us not to start some sort of a super PAC and start being a part of those conversations versus being reacting to them, which we always are. Because there's nobody that really represents the investor's interest but the investor. And if everybody said, hey, you know what? David, you're a smart guy. This guy's a smart guy over here. This guy's a smart guy over here. Let's all put a little bit of money together and let's go get into Washington, D.C. and start kind of batting down some of these laws. Because what's happening is, even on the city council law, in Kansas City, there's a group called KC Tenants, a bunch of crappy, no good, power hungry people who are basically using tenants, and they're knocking down every development project. They haven't provided any housing, but they just are saying, landlord's bad, tenants deserve free housing.
Well, I'd personally not invest in any of those types of areas.
Yeah. Well, my point is, what happens is, once, David, they do it in one market, these legislatures are no different than like real estate wholesalers and stuff. They're like, oh, that works over there. We're going to go and make that same law happen over here. And so that's what I worry about. And it's just, I just wanted to talk to you because you're a smart guy about it, but we can move on to the politics and all that garbage because it's kind of a little bit of a Debbie Downer sometimes. So with Deal Machine and the software changing, how did you guys decide to go with like offering that? Was that like going from user feedback for the phone numbers, or how are you continuing to make all these improvements?
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to continue innovating, and we realize that is the true power of providing value as a software. Right. I think a lot of softwares in the industry have been built by real estate investors exclusively, and they build the software like you would build a house, right? Where you pay to build it, and then you just sit back and collect your rent for 50 years. I don't think that's how software works.
That's a very good.
And I think that's why we've been able to grow, beyond some others in the marketplace, because we've continued to always innovate and improve it. Every 3 weeks, if you look on the iTunes App Store, you could see our history of updates. It's every 3 weeks since the beginning of when we started. Mm-hmm. So it's about doing that in a way that's not disruptive.
Yes.
To using the software.
I hate when they do.
Because when you make a huge change.
Yeah.
Facebook used to do this in the beginning days too, right? Huge overhaul, everyone's pissed. I mean, they still kept using the software, but nowadays, Facebook doesn't really roll out updates that are that disruptive.
Right.
I mean, I haven't heard that in years.
No.
So it's all about making sure that the update is very thoughtful, very easy to use still, and thoroughly tested before rolling that out. And that includes getting actual people to figure out if that's good or better off than it was before. So through that thought process, the business model of skip tracing, it just seemed like, how would you make that better? If you could offer it for free in the included price. When you have all the data like we do, like we're not reselling somebody else's API, which is like a transactional lookup for each property, then we can do more interesting things with it because we have all the data in our own database. So we can pre-match it to the homes. We can provide you a list of all the people with the same owner's name. So if you don't get a match, you can look up everybody in the US and their phone number that has that same owner's name. So that's why we're able to do that.
All right, so API, what is it?
Stands for Application Programming Interface. It's just how softwares can communicate with each other, right? Okay. So a lot of the traditional skip tracing where you pay 10 cents per lookup, that's because the software company is paying someone else 8 cents for that lookup, right? Okay. They're marking it up a little bit. That's traditionally how everybody has done skip tracing. So API is just a general software term that means two applications are talking to each other.
Yeah, because usually you'll see like an API and it's like, oh, that's for developers. They can go in there and do their thing or whatever like that. You mentioned you got some other things rolling out on DealMachine. Are you able to talk about any of them?
Yeah, so the next thing that people have been asking for was, well, when I call the people where I got the contact info for, like, what dialer do you guys recommend using? A lot of these dialers, they're having trouble showing up as spam, so I'm not getting through to a lot of people. Triple line dialers, what they do is they will call your next 3 people on your list, and they will hang up when one of them answers. They'll hang up the other 2, call them back later. But that trashes your numbers. When your phone shows possibly spam, those triple line dialers, the phone companies know, oh man, this number makes a lot of 10-second calls. Like, it sounds like a spammer.
Right.
So those triple line dialers were nice, they sound nice, but that's one reason why the reputation of the numbers they're using goes to spam, and your phone company shows it as spam. And of course, I don't answer those calls. Some people do, but we're coming out with a new version of a dialer. It's not like a triple line dialer or really anything else that's out there. We try to really build the interface from scratch. So I'm excited to unveil that July 1st, actually.
Oh, so it's there.
There's going to be a special event. Yeah, it's being beta tested by some people right now.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning into our podcast right now. I am so happy that you are here. You are in the right spot to be getting inspired by other people that have just achieved their goals so that you can achieve your goals. Do me a favor, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us grow, and give us comments and feedbacks. We read those, it helps us grow, and you are the most important person in this podcast is the listener. And so if you give us your feedback, it will allow us to create a better podcast for you. So I really appreciate it. And make sure you enjoy the show and leave us a 5-star review.
Another question. So one thing that I get really excited about talking to you, David, is that most people who do software, the software thing that they build is not for themselves. They just build it to make money. And you build it for yourself. And so as an owner user, you're constantly looking at it as an investor, not just as the guy who runs DealMachine or as 50% of the person who runs DealMachine. Right. You're looking at it as, hey, how do I make this better for myself? Because you're still actively investing.
For sure. Yeah.
So talk to me about what does your active investing looks like, and how do you see that growing, and how do you continue to keep the edge against the competition? Because I'm sure there's competition coming your way.
Well, one of the competition got bought by a title company, and then they haven't updated their software since then. So we're pretty good there. And then I don't know what happened with a couple of the other companies, but I haven't seen much from them either that were traditionally big names, right? So for at the moment, I think that best defense is a strong offense.
For sure.
And we've learned a lot about how to do that over 8 years, right?
Yeah.
Things you don't want to do is you don't want to make big changes that confuse and upset people or that miss, and they're not as good to use as you thought they were. Using it myself is always driven historically, like what we should do next.
Right.
I got a shout out to my partner who's very talented on the development side.
Yes.
Who's really come to understand what investors, want through his experience in the past 8 years too. So a big part of that vision comes from the product side too, and how that team is talking with investors. We've got office hours 4 days a week, and so that product team attends those calls, right? It's just like real people that are asking questions. So
right.
we're always very much speaking to the investing. On my side, I've done 8 deals this year. And when I started out, I didn't have a lot of money. I was making 50 grand a year.
Right.
You buy a rental property on the retail market and you run out of money, right? So it's like $150,000 property requires about $30,000 down. So I needed to go off market, find good enough deals,
right.
so that way I could force appreciation by fixing it up, maybe adding square footage or just improving what the inside looked like,
right.
so that I have so much equity I can refinance, get all that money back out that I put into it by purchasing it and fixing it up, called the BRRRR strategy: buy, rent, renovate, refinance, repeat.
Yep.
So I have 19 deals.
Nice.
And I've worked hard to make sure 75% of those deals were BRRRR strategy deals where I got the money back out.
Awesome.
And at first, I bought a property for $4,000, renovated it for $65,000.
Yeah.
Then it was worth $120,000 through that forced appreciation, and I could refinance it, get $75,000 back, or $80,000 back, and then I could go do the next deal.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what my investing looks like. About 19 properties, $4 million in value. Sweet spot's like $160,000. It rents for $1,600 a month, so it meets the 1% rule.
Nice.
And yeah, it's just what I've been doing. And I took a break for a little bit when DealMachine was really growing in the early years, and I've been excited to get back to it in the last 9 months.
Yeah, was that when Ryan said something to you? Because he told me he might have struck your competitive nerve a little bit when you asked him about his numbers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm a very competitive person.
That's a good segue for my next, because I've noticed that about you. You're super competitive. You started this fitness journey. You did a bunch of things in the last couple of years. Can you talk about those things?
Yeah, so I did the 75 hard, which was a mental toughness challenge.
Oh, I made it to 40 days.
It's really hard. You do 245. I actually never successfully completed it, but I did it for 90 days straight.
Okay.
I missed, so here's what it is, okay? Yeah. So it's 2 45-minute workouts, and you need to follow a diet strictly. You need to read a book, 10 pages of a book every day. You need to take a progress picture every day. Yep. And so what would happen was, if I'd travel like I did this today, I couldn't do my morning workouts, right? So I'd get busy talking with people like you, and then it'd be 11 p.m. and I'd realize, I didn't do a workout, and shit, well, I'd stay up late and do it, right? So now it's 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'd be so exhausted I'd go to bed. Then I woke up the next day, I'm like, God, no, I forgot to read. And it's
the picture's the worst one.
Yeah. So the way the contest works, if you forget, that's it. You start back at day 0. Yeah. So I had 2 misses, and I started over immediately the next day without hesitation. So on day 90, I think I messed up a 3rd time, and I took a break, right? So it's so hard. I didn't even finish it, but it developed really amazing habits for me. I still work out twice a day, follow a diet. It's built me a lot of good habits, and one day I'd love to do it and successfully complete it. But
it's tough. It's tougher than you think.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah, and now you're also a competitive. Is it wake surfer?
I did a lot of wake surfing. I did compete last year.
Okay.
Yeah. This year I have not done it as hard, because one thing I realized is I did a bodybuilding contest and I did the wake surfing, and I was kind of getting into driving, amateur race car driving, and I was dieting for the bodybuilding. I could no longer wake surf because you really need energy to go 2 hours straight.
Right.
And then I was also with my coach in the car, and I was mentally losing focus and was kind of wasting his time. I realized you can't do 5 things at once.
Yeah.
It really does compromise what you're able to do overall. Yeah. So I've kind of pulled back and really went all in on race car driving this year.
Yeah.
And so on those race car driving trips, I eat muffins and I eat shit I shouldn't eat to keep my energy level high.
Yeah.
And then when I come back home, then I get back to the dieting and the working out. So that's kind of how I found my balance. But yeah.
Where does the competitive edge come from, though? Because for me, it comes as a chip on my shoulder going up broke. Where does yours come from?
Oh, man. Dude, that's a good question where it comes from.
I mean, you got to know, like, I'm guessing on the first job, it was like, and I'm just going to throw this out there, it's like you realizing your worth and the other guy not. Like, you realizing how hard you're working, I'm going to show you what I've got in me. Sometimes that happens to me. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
It wasn't his fault because he chose to want to own 100% of the business.
Right.
And you can't expect somebody to work as hard as you do if you don't give them the same equity that you have.
Right.
And it was just ultimately like, I know I want that for myself, so I just need to go out and get it.
Right.
And yeah, so I don't really fault him for it now. I mean, at the time, it probably showed up as some resentment, but...
No, I'm just saying, like, I use stuff like that, maybe not as a resentment, but as a chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
To be like, I'm going to show you. You know what I mean? And I'm just wondering, where does your drive come from?
Yeah, my parents were concerned that I was going to lose it all by going in on a business, real estate. And that was really cool to show them. When it was successful, then I treated them to some trips and took them to Las Vegas for the first time.
Awesome.
And that was really fun, right? So that's how it started.
Right.
Now, I think one of the things I've learned from my race car driving coach is we're only here to win first place. And he's like, if you've won enough, nothing else really matters. So we're not here to roll around in second place. Mm-hmm. And he's just one of the most committed people ever.
Yeah.
And if I have like the rare race where I didn't hold anything back because I was scared of like hitting somebody. Obviously, if you go too hard, you might lose control and hit somebody, but there's no better feeling than knowing you gave it actually 100%.
Right.
Like, it's just a great feeling.
Yeah.
Like, it's way better than winning first, but not having to try that hard.
Right.
It's way better to know, oh, I got second, but dude, I gave it 100% my all. And so that's like the present moment now, is just how great that feels to have truly given 100% of what you're capable of. And it's just like an irreplaceable feeling that I've just realized from the way my coach is.
Yeah, I see you take on challenge after challenge, and I'm just like, dude, this guy is like, he's into everything.
Yeah, and that's
you don't have a wife and kids yet, do you?
No, but it's been a life choice, right? Because I know a wife and kids obviously involve sacrifice. It's not one that I've intentionally like just been like, I just don't think I'm ready for that at this moment, because there's too many things like I want to go do that I think I would struggle to be able to do if I had other commitments.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I didn't get married. My kids are 10 now. I got married when they're in 15, so I'm 9 years married, and I'm 46 now, so I didn't get married. You're 34, 33?
34, yeah.
So yeah, I had 3 more years of runway for myself. You know, I just know how much things slow down when you do have kids, and they do. Like your business success, it doesn't like slow down. In fact, I would argue, if you got the right woman by you, or right partner, or whatever it is, you can go faster. But if you pick the wrong one, you can freaking go into the wall. So I guess let's walk back and kind of tell me like what's next for you. Personal goals, business goals.
Dude, I mean, things on the personal side and business side are fantastic. I mean, we're at 44% year growth now. I'd love to help a lot more people. Actually, one of the challenges I took was to learn social media.
Okay.
So much of our business was through people like yourself who have been able to communicate in a way that helps people build the financial freedom that they want, quit their job, 10x their income. So I took on the challenge of learning social media myself. So
You've grown pretty fast.
Dude, I've had a few hits this year, but before that, I posted 4 videos a day all last year.
Yeah.
4 videos a day, dude. It was like 900 posts, right?
Yeah.
And all those at-bats, so to say, is like what taught me things that work and things that don't. So that's something I'm really proud of and excited to, just help more people that way.
That's awesome. I'd love to see you do that. I was like, oh man, this guy's going all in on this next.
Dude, at some point,
I just know you're a competitor.
I just know I need a challenge, okay? So
yeah,
that was like an amazing challenge for me. The best part was things that I could learn that are valuable in my life in any other way. What's more valuable than how to communicate? right, with a seller or it's on social media, what's more valuable than how to communicate? Life is just communication. So I was very excited about that.
Yeah, and it's funny to learn like human psychology is really taught through social media, because you learn, like, you say one thing just a way that you would normally say, and you're like, oh, that really triggered people. Like, I remember the first time I was wearing a backpack walking through Home Depot, and I say, we buy the cheap stuff, and they're like, slumlord, boom, boom, boom. I'm sure you've had a video that has gone viral like that. So it's continue to try to grow your business brand, your personal brand, continue to try to help people, and you've grown 44% year after year after year, and you've got a great staff. You guys do great training. I can tell you, as somebody, I just randomly approached David. He's a totally just an easygoing guy. I mean, we just talked about how competitive you are, but you are also easygoing. Like, I say you're humble, I say you're hardworking, and that's hard to find for people who are young like yourself and have had a lot of early success. So I just can't see what's next in your chapter. I'm sure you have some pretty big, ambitious goals as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see 100% growth this year. Like, we're going to help people again with the dialer that I mentioned. That's going to be paired with the unlimited contact info that people are loving right now. So, I mean, that's what's exciting to me right now, is just like, let's continue to have great hits with things that can help people build their business. And so that's what I'm really excited about. What's more important than like winning or being the best at somebody is like, what are the things I could take away from that and learn, right, that are really valuable? Because at the end of the day, your money can go away. We just heard a presentation from some guy who got foreclosed on, and then he did 50 Ironmans, right?
Yeah.
To get himself out of a hole. And your money, material things can always go away, but your experiences and things that you learn and your skills, that's what can't be taken away. So I try to look at things through that lens.
That is an awesome way. Last final two questions before we wrap things up. Number one, thank you so much for doing this on the spur of the moment. We're in Clearwater Beach, Florida. First thing, why should someone get started investing in real estate? If they're watching this video and they're on the sidelines, we know how many people wait. Why should they start right now today?
Yeah, I mean, I just posted a video where I made $160,000, from buying a rundown house that was uninhabitable,
right,
fixing it up and creating a great product somebody could call their home as a rental property. And I made the $160,000 from that. I don't know of a way where I don't know of a faster way to build wealth,
right,
essentially.
Yeah.
And it's a proven business model. It's not like a huge risk,
right,
where you're going into the unknown, starting it, like on the software side. Like, that's generally like it's like more risky, right?
Oh, big time.
Yeah, so I just think that for anybody who's talking about this, a general audience of somebody who really wants to earn more, I mean, that's the proven business model that's been done for centuries is the best way that I know how to do it. So I think, the people are just afraid to take the first step. We heard that today in our presentation as well.
Yeah.
That's the scariest thing, is just getting your body in motion, right? So I think now's the day that you should start, not because of any market condition. I think you can do it in any market condition. I think that now's the place to start because you're listening to this video and you obviously have some type of interest.
Right, and then secondarily, like, to follow up with that, my recommendation is you start with DealMachine. And I always tell people the same way. I'm like, dude, no matter where you're at, like, people who come into my program, I tell them, they're like, where do I start? I want to wholesale, I want to flip. I'm like, start driving for dollars, download DealMachine and do that. And so for people who are looking to start, and you want to start today, we're going to include my link.
Yeah, you get a 7-day trial, and then you get $35 that you could use towards sending, 70 postcards if you're going to send the direct mail route, right? Just put that in perspective. You probably need to send 500 houses postcards to get a deal, right? But we just want you to get started, get in motion, not have an excuse to stop, taking that first step. So you get 70 postcards to send on our dime to get started, right? Start getting calls back.
I love the fact that you said that, but is it possible that out of those 70 postcards that somebody could get a deal? Has that happened before?
Yeah, of course it's possible, but here's where I don't want you to fall into the trap of, like, the girl I'm helping who's graduating college. She's like, well, I kind of want to start slow so I don't waste my money.
Yeah.
But the thing is, her dad's going to ask her in a month, well, how's it going?
Yeah.
And I know she hasn't done enough postcards yet. It's going to be really, like, demotivating, demoralizing when you're 3 months in and you haven't gotten a deal yet. Your dad's still asking, like, well, when are you going to, like, start paying your own bills and stuff, right? Yeah. So I had to have a conversation with her to say, listen, if you want to be economical, knock on everybody's door. But if you don't want to put in that time, send 500 postcards at a minimum, because that way you're giving yourself a chance to let the numbers and the math work itself out so that you find somebody who does want to sell their property.
I really appreciate you taking the time, number one. We're gonna hook you guys up with a free affiliate link so you can check it out. Real estate's changed my life. I know it's changed your life. You've invented an app because of it. So we're out here at a mastermind event. You're obviously still highly involved in your business and trying to get better at it every day. So you can tell this is somebody who truly cares. And I know from personal experience, we have a mutual friend, Ryan Haywood, who is, you guys have done a podcast together. You guys are constantly giving back. What is that podcast? How can they find you on all your socials?
Yeah, Deal Machine podcast. We've done 150 episodes, all specifically on wholesaling.
Yeah.
So if you're looking into wholesaling as a business model, that's the podcast to check out. How much do you cover wholesaling versus other types? Like, I know you buy a lot of properties.
Yeah, we cover a fair amount of wholesaling, but we don't cover all wholesaling.
Got it. Yeah. So we just made the decision to stick purely on that. And it's called the Deal Machine Podcast.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. You guys crank out episodes all the time.
We do 3 a week.
With people. You were doing like 3 a day, weren't you?
Well, that was social media posts. But
Okay.
on the podcast, we've done 3 a week since a year and a half ago. So done 150 episodes. So it's a mixture of interviewing guests that have had success, doing 1 to 10 wholesale deals, how they got those deals. Ryan will do a solo episode on maybe something that's happened with him, and I've done some as well.
Final question. I know I said last final question, but just one final question. If you could interview anybody on your podcast, dead or alive, for yourself personally, who would it be?
Dude, I've interviewed people who are very advanced. I feel like the best way to learn is from somebody who's 2 steps ahead of you.
Right.
Actually, so we've tried really, the next person I'd want to interview is you, who's actually listening to this and done about 3 deals. So just hit me up, Lecko on Instagram if that's you. I'd love to talk with you specifically on wholesale deals.
Awesome. Peace.